the morning.
That is, it sounds like drugs. He goes, it is drugs. And I say, well, I'm not going to send you money for drugs. If you want drugs, go get a job.
So anyway, I just think that should be a motto.
If you want drugs, go get a job.
Yeah. So, but this whole thing is kind of interesting, but it reminds me of when I used to be a factory worker during my college days. And I realize at this point, and I think this is true, even though I believe the two of us are clean and sober, to say the least, generally. And but there, well, I was working this international harvester for a while, and I worked one whole summer, and I was working. I could never keep up with the demands of this simple job of there was a sub assembly that I was responsible for making, and I had to make this thing
as in submarine or a
sub assembly. So this was a part of the brake system, and it was like there was a device that had a couple of hoses on it, and they had to put a thing here and a thing there. And you had to drill out this, and you had to put a cap on it. Right. It's about 8-9 step process, and I had to make these things all day.
Right.
That's the point at which I learned that if you want to work in factories in the United States, and I always advise this to people, or factories anywhere, learn to become either a receiving clerk or an inspector.
Inspector, right.
And the inspector is the best job there is. And it doesn't take much. And it's a good job anyway.
Wait,
so I'm doing this thing.
Were you high?
No, I wasn't high. It turns out there was a big drug bust in both the General Motors plant and also at the International Harvester place, where these guys were strung out on amphetamines. And that's the only, and because I could never keep up with the quota. The guy was always being, you're way behind. You're thousands of units that you're not done.
Yeah, that's why you got to take the cokes.
So these guys it was amphetamines, beans. And so these guys, so apparently
what did you call them?
Beans, Benzedrine.
Beans, man. Bennies.
So
beans.
Apparently these guys are down in these things all day. They were just completely wasted on drugs, and they could get their production numbers up.
Right.
And I think that this is, and if we look at it, the United States is laced with cocaine and all kinds of other performance enhancing drugs because there's so many demands on the workers. That's why our productivity is so high. But at the same time, let's face reality about this stuff. If this is the way it is, legalize drugs for God's sake. All right.
Yeah.
Done.